What's your scariest car story that doesn't end with a crash? I was driving a rental car on the highway outside of Omaha at about 11 p.m. Just corn and soybean fields out there, and it was so dark that I couldn't see outside the area of my headlights. I was doing about 70 miles per hour or so and saw a flash of movement on the passenger side. It was a person jumping in front of my car. I slammed on the brakes and shut my eyes while waiting for the impact, but when I opened them a second later and stopped the car, I hadn't hit anything. I pulled off to the side and got out of the car to look for whoever it was that I almost hit, but I couldn't find anyone. Just dark fields. When I think about it now, I'm almost certain it couldn't have been an animal. I distinctly remember clothes. Weirdest thing that has ever happened to me. Did you hit a ghost? I'm pretty sure I missed a ghost. How would you know the difference? And even if I did know, would the answer matter? Well, I work in insurance. I'm pretty sure you'll need to fill out an accident questionnaire form for that ghost. Standard practice. What ghost? My own scary time. Headed to Oakland Airport, approaching it from I-5 headed south. It's about 5 in the morning and we've been up since 2 to catch a very early flight. I'm completely exhausted. We're an hour out from the airport, and suddenly we hit a kind of rush hour I've never seen before. I'm the far right-hand lane and doing 70 miles per hour with the flow of traffic. I've got people passing doing 20 or 30 above that. I've got people passing on the shoulder. And suddenly, the shoulder ends. For the last 30 miles, the shoulder is a wall. Maybe my depth perception was messed up, but I'm pretty positive I had about 1.5 feet between me and a concrete wall at 70 miles per hour and little sleep. I'll gladly sacrifice the best rental car experience I've ever had for never traveling to Oakland Airport again. Driving home drunk at 2 a.m. and going 120 miles per hour on the freeway. 120? Good Lord, I don't know that I own a vehicle new enough to drive that fast. It was a 2000 Acura TL. I miss that car. On I-85 South leaving Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta. I had just paid to get out of the airport parking deck and I had my wallet on my lap. Was just getting onto the interstate and getting settled into my long drive home when I felt my wallet start slipping off my lap and between my legs. Instinctively, I closed my legs together quickly to try to catch my wallet, but in doing so, the top of my left thigh turned my steering wheel hard left. I was in the middle lane, shot directly across the fast lane and was staring straight at the median divider wall. I mashed the clutch in, steered hard right to correct, fishtailed a few times between the inside median and the fast lane and finally got everything settled back down. I never hit anything. I got off on the very next exit and parked in a gas station parking lot for about 30 minutes waiting for my heart rate to come down. Me, my friend and 2 girls were about 19 when we decided we would get drunk and sleep in the car for a laugh. We pulled up in a car park that we thought, from previous experience, that we would not be seen or disturbed. After we each had about 4 beers, the Army police, not sure what the actual term is, turned up, told us we were on Army territory and asked us to leave. I was the driver and clearly didn't want to mess with these guys, so we drove off and knew there was another car parked close by that we would be able to use. As I pull out into the road, a police van spots us and pulls me over. They start asking questions and shining their flashlights at my face, at which point I thought I'd end up losing my license and my car. They ask for my license, I hand it to them. A few seconds later they get called through the radio and asked to go to some place due to an emergency, so they look at us and say don't do anything stupid, just go home. To this day I think they realized something wasn't quite right. This had to be the luckiest escape I've ever had. We end up going to the car park we were headed to and continued drinking. At about 1 a.m. we heard a really loud scream nearby, but we didn't think much of it. When we decided to go home the next morning, we see a car in the middle of the road on the way out. It was on its roof, pretty bad condition, and blood was spread on the cracked windscreen. I was worried that I was still under the influence. So I left with one of the girls while my buddy and the other girl called the police. They head to the train station, tell their story, and when they get out we go to pick them up. Later that day my buddy gets a call from the police accusing him of being a wife-beating drug addict from London before realizing they were mistaken. We never found out what that was about, but we sure as hell won't forget that night. I was driving my dad's manual car and I had just started driving it and him exiting a parking lot, which is a steep hill to the road with a stop sign at the top, so I stop and am waiting for a break in traffic when a brand new Camaro pulls like a foot from my bumper. I just decided that I couldn't do it and waved him around and got the death stare. That guy was a serious idiot. If I ever have a really expensive car, I'm going to stay as far away from others as possible. Hell, I might keep a junker to drive in parking lots. I was pretty dumb in high school. I used to go 100 miles per hour plus regularly for the adrenaline rush. My friend had never been 100 and one night he asked me to take him. We were going 105 plus in a 25 miles per hour zone when we got to an old one-lane bridge. The bridge had a slightly parabolic shape that resulted in some air. We probably went 40 feet at least. Easy to go that far at 105. We hit the ground bumper first in my leased Chevy Cruze, which messed up the front bumper and underside of the front of my car. We skidded back and forth on the road trying to slow down before finally coming to a rest. The adrenaline rush was insane. TL, Dr. Need for Speed skills saved me when I caught air. Oh God. You leased a car? I'm so sorry. Yeah, it wasn't my best decision. Numerous occasions as a kid when my mom was fucked up on Xanax on the highway. Luckily it is no longer an issue. I started my car and put it drive. First stop sign and my car wouldn't stop, it was accelerating. I was going 80 kilometers in a 30 kilometer zone, unable to stop, and was beginning to panic. I remember looking at the pedals to be sure I was braking, putting the car in neutral, trying the emergency brake, and finally taking the keys out. The car finally stopped in a small snowbank. Turns out it was very cold, -30 Celsius, and the accelerator froze. If nobody got hurt that day, it was because it was 4:30 in the morning and no one was on the road. I have never heard of an accelerator freezing. That's terrifying. It was. I could have killed someone. My 5th time driving on a highway, I just got off a turnpike and this guy in a huge truck was in the lane next to mine. I was in front of him and it was obvious I wasn't going to move, so he started merging into me. I had 3 options: speed up and hit the person in front of me, merge into the middle lane and hopefully not crash into the car behind me, or brake and let the guy hit me. I merged into the middle lane without a signal because I had no time, and the driver of the truck laughed while everyone else was honking at me. There are a lot of people who drive truck that are really great guys. That is completely overshadowed by the few sociopaths. I'm not talking about those kind of truckers. I'm talking about a self-mover truck. Oh, okay. Sadly, still applies. Same sociopaths, different vehicles. My older brother and I were fighting in the back seat of the family car. My mom turned around and yelled at us to stop. So we did. My brother then faked a punch at me. I flinched so hard I smashed my face against the window. You got big brothered pretty hard there. I was driving back home to Arlington, VA from my parents' place near Philadelphia in July. For anybody who hasn't been to DC at that time, I'd recommend that you keep it that way. Not only is it stinking hot, but we have frequent storms that dump buckets of rain in a short amount of time. Anyway, I was about 10 minutes from the DC Beltway traveling on I-95 when one of these storms struck. While this wasn't the worst storm that I had been through down there, it was bad enough that I went from general nighttime conditions to practically zero visibility in about 10 seconds. Pretty much the only things I could see were the road lines directly in front of me and any car's lights that were ahead. Now, my first instinct was to pull off to the side of the road and wait until the storm passed. However, I decided that this was a bad idea for 2 reasons. I had no real idea where the end of the road was. Instead of merely pulling off to the shoulder, I could have easily instead driven my car into a ditch. By stopping, I would make my car a stationary target, perfect for some other car to hydroplane and smack right into it. Instead, I put on my four-ways and just followed the lights of the car in front of me. This continued until I had gotten onto the beltway. It abated a bit after that. So I continue on. Right before I cross the bridge into Virginia, I get hit again with this zero visibility storm. The problem now is that I'm the lead car with nobody in front of me, so all I have are the highway lines directly in front of me and the hope that I have a 5-second reaction time in case anything goes wrong. Fortunately, I was in the fast lane when this happened, and my exit was on the left side, so I didn't have to worry about changing lanes. I just followed that line on the left-hand side until it got me to the off-ramp. After that, I kept on going east on 267 until I got to my exit. By that time, the storm had passed enough that I was able to finish the drive home free of any fears of storm-induced car crashes. TLDR had to deal with near total visibility loss 2 times in one night in the American urban area with the worst drivers. Oh man, it's even worse when you're in a whiteout, sorta like a fog in a very snowy place. You won't even be able to check the ground for lines because the snow's covering it, plus other drivers won't be able to see you because your lights would just blend in with the white fog. I remember being in the passenger seat with my grandfather when he fell asleep at the wheel. I opened my mouth to say something and he woke up on his own and we drifted back into our lane. Never rode with him again. Hit an ice patch and spun 180 degrees in place. No other cars around. I was 17. Looking back on it, since there was nobody else around and nobody got hurt. Was it a little fun? I had no time to react, and when I stopped I laughed nervously. If it could be done safely, I would do it again. Years ago my sister and I went to go bail my brother out of jail, again, in some backwater town in Alabama. Well, there was this 18-wheeler that would slow down to 20 to 25 miles per hour in no passing zones, speed limit was 55, and speed up to 60 and would take up both lanes where the road did a 2-lane trucks on right part. I got pissed and decided to pass him. Was in a POS Civic that didn't have much go. Well, he speeds up, of course. I could have passed him if he didn't speed up, and all of a sudden I get scared, really scared, so I give up trying to pass, brake and get behind him. My sister called me a pussy, and no sooner did I get behind him than another 18-wheeler came flying around the corner in the other lane, probably doing 60. I ended up pulling over as my sister and I were freaking out for about 20 meters before we continued on. Blew a stop sign at about 35 miles per hour. Was literally a second ahead of getting T-boned by a city bus also doing about 35 miles per hour. In my Pontiac Sunfire, I wouldn't be here right now. I was driving north on I-75 through Georgia and saw a car upside down on the side of the road. No cops, nothing. Just an upside down car in broad daylight. The thing that scared me is that I wasn't fazed and I just kept driving. The fuck is wrong with me? Drunk drivers are sort of dangerous, but the biggest menace on the road is certainly elderly drivers. So for example, today I'm looking outside my office window and some elderly woman is trying to turn left at the light. So first law broken is there's a sign saying no turning left. However, she's old and doesn't see it. There's a bit of an opening, so she turns left and slams the brake when she suddenly sees the constant stream of pedestrians who are crossing the crossing when they have the walking symbol. She scared the ever-living shit out of those pedestrians, I'm sure, but it wasn't like she was driving fast like she should have been required to in order to make that turn. I'm fairly sure she would have caused the other drivers to brake no matter what, but now those drivers are completely blocked on the road and had to completely stop. Not once does she look to her right to acknowledge she realizes she's completely blocking 2 lanes of traffic, but she then starts slowly creeping forward as if it's the pedestrians' fault they have the right of way and she wants to go. They decline allowing her to go forward, and one of the people who got scared she was going to hit them sort of stood there in front of her. I'm sure she gave the old lady quite the evil eyes. The red light comes and the crosswalk is clear to go and the old lady gets going. Bus stopped right there, and often the bus is stopped and you can cut right in front of it before the next light, but people frequently cut in front of the bus while the bus is going forward. Normally the bus driver knows people are going to do that, but I'm pretty sure they hit because the bus driver eventually got out to check for damage. Meanwhile, the old lady had no clue what happened and just sat at the red light in her car. Bus driver walks up to her window and at the green she drove away. Driving a delivery van back to the depot at about 11 p.m. dark country road, no lights for big distances, came around a bend and two colored discs turned to look at me from the middle of the road. It was the biggest fucking eagle owl I have ever seen. Looked like an Ewok new pair of pants once back. The other time I hit a deer, this was late at night too, country road. Doing a good 70 to 80, long straight. When I see this deer leap from the embankment at the side of the road, it was just slow motion, watching the large deer drift down in front of me, taking up the full window of the driver's cab. Muscle memory must have kicked in, fueled with adrenaline straight from some primeval source, as the brakes come on and there seemed to be a dust cloud and maps flying around the cabin. Hit the deer straight on. As the van was screeching to a halt, you could hear the deer sliding up the road in front of the van. Sounded like a heavy brush on a rough pavement. How I managed to keep that van on the road I will never know. Also had a handgun pulled on me whilst driving down the road. Some fucknut thought that it was funny to do this. Seems that targeting delivery vehicles. Personal story was when we had an icy rain followed up with instant super cold day. Roads were very slick and I saw tons of people losing control of their vehicles, but I'm driving pretty much straight and I'm leaving plenty of room. Suddenly I notice the guy in front of me with brake lights glowing, but he isn't stopping. Then I see his ass end kicking out from behind him. So I hit the brakes and I'm not stopping. I even tried the pumping brakes thing, which usually works, but I really wasn't stopping. I wasn't spinning, but we kept going for about 50 feet at least. Entire block at least. The scary thing to me was, I'm driving 99 Caravan. The guy in front of me is something newer, which has all those newer features that stop you from losing control. He'll eventually get control and stop, and I won't be able to. Then we both cross through a red light and somehow there's no traffic going through when we do. Which is surprising because this is a Walmart intersection. And we slid through that, and right about crosswalk on the other side my tapping of brakes really starts kicking in and the other dude is leaving my lane headed toward the curb. I basically just wait for him to completely clear and I keep going. A friend asked me if I and my nephew could work for his uncle's business. I was low on money at the time and had some spare time, so I agreed. We would rendezvous at the local mosque. So we're at the mosque and some guy yells something at us in Turkish. We both, not Turkish Suriname, have no clue what this guy's is saying. He then says, "Are you colored bro and nephew?" So we both said yes, and he said, "I'm Khalid, not his name, I'm your ride." We both get in the car and the drive was going fine. Work was also good. After work he asks us if we need a ride back to mosque. So we thought if the ride to work was safe, the ride back to the mosque should be the same, right? Wrong. Something in his personality was different. He was driving really aggressive and we both feared for our lives. Out of nothing he says to us, "You know our boss is a real dick." Never met the boss, but I asked why. He said, "I worked 20 hours straight for that guy and he finally comes and visit me and brings me some cocaine. It wasn't pure at all." We both started to get real scared. This guy is high on coke driving us to God nowhere. He then looked like he was searching something in the car while driving. When he finally found what turned out to be a bag of weed, we live in Holland, so no worries. He started to crumble the weed while driving. He then says to us, "I'm not gonna steer until I'm finished rolling this joint. At this point we're going 80 km/h where the speed limit is 50 km/h. At this point we're saying our goodbyes." And just when he is about to ride off a traffic light, he finished rolling his joint. He lit it and asked if we want to smoke. I declined, but my nephew says he needs a smoke. So the drive continues and we're making small talk when he asks us how we are getting paid for work. We both thought we were getting the money on our accounts. But he says he only get paid in cash cause he doesn't have a bank account. So we're joking, who doesn't have a bank account? To which he responds, someone who isn't legal, this guy isn't fucking legal in this country. He doesn't have a license, a bank account, a passport, nothing. He could crash the car, let us die, and nobody would know about it. The next 15 minutes were full stress mode. He was drinking beer behind the wheel and doing illegal shit like illegal people do. At one point he even tried to hit another car by throwing his beer bottle. When we finally got back to the mosque, I kissed the ground. Thank God I was still alive. The worst part about all this is, we didn't even get paid. Yeah, I risked my life for nothing. DL, Doctor got in the car with Osama bin Laden's nephew.